Next, we have Irakli Beridze. He heads the United Nations Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics with the objective to provide policymakers with improved knowledge and understanding on this subject, finding synergies with traditional threats and risks, as well as identifying solutions that AI can contribute to the achievement of United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals. He is also the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2013. Please welcome Irakli.
Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's fantastic to be with you. First of all, thank you very much for organizers to invite me here. Personally, great thanks to Tufi. I don't see him here, but thank you, Tufi, for putting up such a groundbreaking event. I really think that this is something, beginning of a really, really long journey, which is going to make a lot of difference. I'm going to try to share some of my experiences, some of my thoughts, which may lead to some interesting partnerships and ideas which could be derived after this meeting. The name of my presentation is Maximize the Chance of Global Prosperity, and I really do believe that this is probably one of the most important things we can do. Well, let's look at it. Today, AI is probably potentially one of the most powerful technology we have ever created, and everybody agrees that. At the same time, we are richer, we are smarter and connected than never before as a human species. We never accumulated so much wealth, we never accumulated so much knowledge, and we never been so much connected. So therefore, we have a unique opportunity to solve some of the unsolvable problems, which some years ago, we could not even think of. At the same time, we have really unprecedented risks as well, and therefore we need to really put all our efforts, knowledge, and wealth and funding to solve all of that. Now, let me take you to some of my personal journeys, how certain things evolved, my engagement in development of the artificial intelligence policy making as well. Let's do a little bit of a time traveling. Let's go back to 2003, Iraq War. I was at that time coordinating the assistance and protection against chemical weapons. Some of the nations were super paranoid that Saddam Hussein would unleash chemical weapons, which didn't happen later on. And this was the time when Coalition of Willings, the big nations, went in with the state-of-art technology. It was the best of the best at that time. We saw the war, CNN live, or many other major outlets were showing it live. We thought that we would never get better technology than that. And can you imagine that we, at that time in 2003, had 0 military robots involved in that conflict, and we had only a handful of very primitive drones. 15 years after, the military technology is full of AI, full of drones, full of robotics. We have millions and millions in making. Right now, 15 years is a very small portion of life. So this is a really good demonstration to me, striking demonstration how things have evolved. Now let's look at the civilian. If we took it as a point of departure, 2003, what was happening back then, we didn't really have iPhones, we didn't have smartphones. We were using telephones like that. I don't know if anyone is using phone like this. Please show me if yes. Okay, there are a few people, and that's wonderful. And we still had VCRs. I checked it. Apparently, VCR was discontinued in 2008, 10 years ago. So, I mean, that's where we were. And right now, obviously, we're somewhere here and accelerating as well. So this is a huge advancement. So what was happening at the policy level? On the policy level, things were quite slow, especially on the international policy level. Even back in 2015, Secretary General of United Nations was not talking about artificial intelligence, when this came only in 2017 with the new Secretary General Guterres, who did explicitly mention at the opening statement at the UN General Assembly last year that AI could be a game changer and it could do wonderful things, but at the same time it could pose some great risks. Now, actually, if we go back, yeah, in 2015, I initiated the first United Nations program on artificial intelligence and robotics. We conducted an event at the UNGA, at that time, General Assembly. We brought some of the AI thinkers, and some of the member states were looking at me and thinking that this guy is in a science fiction. And some of them still think. Now, let's see what happened since then. From our side, we created a center on AI and robotics. This was finalized last year in September, and the center is located in The Hague, the Netherlands, with the support of the Dutch government and many other stakeholders. We started to conduct a number of activities in that field, and so far it still remains the only UN center which is fully dedicated to that issues. At the same time, of course, a lot has evolved. UN has been involved in the AI with global summits, which is conducted at the International Telecommunication Union. We have Stephen Irakli, which is one of the founding father of this large UN movement, and thank you, Stephen, for doing a wonderful job there. Our center is doing a number of interesting work. We started projects together with Interpol to see how risks and benefits will be conducted in the area of law enforcement, and also we kicked off a big project on the AI-induced automation and how this is going to affect the social stability in developing and transition countries, because there have been a lot of talks about whether AI is going to take our jobs away or not, and what will be effect on it in the developing world. I think it's extremely important because we are covering a large portion of the globe, which may be affected even more than we think, and even more than in the places where we live currently. So we have a lot of infrastructure in place. 8 different offices in a large portion of the world, and many countries involved in that. This is the AI for Good Summit, which I already talked about. One of the big things what UN talks about is how AI is going to contribute in the fulfillment of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. These are major, ambitious undertakings. We're talking about issues like no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, and so on and so forth. This requires a very big concerted efforts, as some of the speakers prior talked about, is that how different communities need to communicate and contribute to that. We're talking about private sector, academia, governments, and many others to solve that type of problems, to maximize the chances of our prosperity. Now, let's look at some of the leading nations who are involved in that. The 3 comes forward in the beginning, which all of them, US, Russia, and China, declared AI as a strategic tool to achieve some of the sort of bigger objectives for them. We're following some other nations as well, and Canada being there with multi-million AI research facilities and many other undertakings. I will not spend too much time on these slides. We need to also at the same time look at some of the greater risks which AI is posing, and from our point of view, we have things like AI-enhanced technological unemployment, which I already talked about, and we are looking at how to mitigate this issue. We're looking at AI-enhanced crime, and I truly do believe that most of the future crime would be one way or the other associated with this technology. And we really need to be aware of that, and at the same time putting in place some efforts how to mitigate these risks. We have issues like lethal autonomous weapon systems, where UN is already engaged in formal discussions on the level of group of governmental experts in Geneva. Every year, countries are coming together to see what sort of framework could be put together to ensure that we will not have a lot of people dying using that technology. But at the same time, honestly, there is not much breakthrough there. Countries cannot agree with each other because some of the current frameworks, which I will touch upon later on, are not certainly bulletproof. Let's go further. All right, a major problem, AI global governance, and can current system do the job? And this is a speculative question. Basically, we don't know, but what is really clear that current system has a number of flaws, and current system is not may not be 100% suited to solve some of the issues, especially related to the AI global governance, where we need to come up with the norms, policies, institutions, incentives, and especially verification mechanism to see that who is doing what and when countries, or if countries are trusting each other. So what we need to do about this and what are the really big dilemmas of international verification right now? Let's look at it. I bring three cases here. One is Douma, Syria in 2018, and you're probably following the issue, what is happening in Syria. There has been many, many allegations of use of chemical weapons. Actually, it's not allegations, chemical weapons have been used in Syria and people have died. What is the problem there is that the sides are blaming each other. There are countries who think that Assad is using it, Assad is saying that rebels are using it, and there are many sort of accusations with each other. The organization where I worked before, OPCW, is conducting investigations. International inspectors supposed to go there and investigate the mechanism. At the same time, we have a complete mistrust between the major powers, and the big issue is the composition of the investigation. So who is the investigators there? And currently, this is a huge issue. The same thing, let's take a Salisbury in UK, when former Russian intelligence agency officer has been poisoned with the chemical substances, and investigation has been taking place, but again, finding of the investigation is not trusted by different sources. Major problem we have in North Korea, for example, with disarmament efforts, when there is a huge mistrust. So these issues persist everywhere, actually, globally, and there is no current solution how to deal with that, how to actually verify the compliance of international obligations. One of the issues which we've been talking about is that how to employ new technologies like artificial intelligence. Maybe we should be thinking about going beyond human investigators, going beyond human beings actually conducting such a verification, but having a trusted non-human agent which would conduct such a job and ensure that everybody else trusts that. It's a very difficult thing to do, but that's why we actually get together in these settings where such issues could be tested. Companies who are working in the area of artificial intelligence and blockchain perhaps can find solutions to that how could this be distributed. It's an extremely complex task, but at the same time, rewards could be unbelievably priceless. Let's look at it. How can AI community benefit from the blockchain, from the cryptographic communities? How can utilizing blockchain technology to install checks and balances that can neutralize risks and any one party establishing a monopoly over AI? This is again a very big issue. Who will develop it? Who is going to control it? And who will be verifying the compliance to that? So I really do encourage all of you to think about, to strike out partnerships and to come up with the solutions. I've been talking to, over these 2 days when I'm in Toronto, I've talked to many different organizations, many different initiatives. TUFI's initiative on Toda seems to be extremely fit to think about solving these global issues, and I really applaud these efforts, and I will be open to talk to many of you to see how we can actually come up with certain solutions which would affect the global peace and maximize the chances of our prosperity.